Hey, it's Soul with the third video, so I can finally finish this Q&A. This took a while to do, and I want to thank everyone for making it all the way to this third video. I'm very surprised, so let's just get right to it. Alright, so next question coming from Johannes Simola. He asks, I play on EU side, but I still want to ask a question. Cool. What are your top 5 favorite WoW lore characters? Ah, crap. Okay, I'm gonna definitely split this one off. Alright, so I mentioned Garrosh. That's like one of the 5, and part of it's because he's a complicated character, and I like more complicated characters than uncomplicated ones. Next would be Arthas. He's definitely up there. Given the complicated sense of his character, how he had his beginnings as a paladin, and then he progressed to become the person that he became, up to becoming the Lich King. After he became the Lich King, I'd say like a lot of the identity of his character, it felt like it was lost. He felt more cliched after that, kind of like a freaking Saturday morning cartoon villain. It's like, here I am, you know, here to disturb your Argent tournament. I'm the Lich King. You know, I thought that was pretty hokey, but at least the character that led up to the Lich King I found to be pretty fascinating. Next on the list is probably Sylvanas for, again, the same reasons. Complicated character. Started off as a ranger, killed, raised, became a banshee. She watched as she probably played part in pretty much the genocide of her entire race over the course of a very short time, with 90% of her race being killed, and then raising the Forsaken, and so on and so forth. So there's just a lot that went on with Sylvanas' character, even though sometimes it might feel fragmented from expansion to expansion in the World of Warcraft. At least right now we get to really explore her character and really deep dive into maybe what's going on in her head, which might be a lot of nothing. It might end up she'll become a very, again, a cliched and boring character, but it just remains to be seen until her story finds its end, whether it's something happy or, okay, I doubt it's going to be happy, until she meets her tragic, violent end. Nazgrim is another fun character, at least up to the point where he got raised as a Death Knight. I found him to be a pretty cool character too. He's a lot less complicated than the other characters that I mentioned, but at the same time, kind of like Saurfang, he was like, you know, Horde through and through, to the point where he did in fact serve his war chief up until the very bitter end. And I think that's, I don't know, I guess I'm partial to characters that were born and raised in the World of Warcraft universe, since we saw him first, I believe, in Wrath of the Lich King, and then we see his end over at Miss Pandaria, and he stuck with his character through and through. He was just a loyal soldier that moved up the ranks and died for his war chief, even if he might not have entirely agreed with what Garrosh was doing. He still served the office of the war chief, and I think that's something to think about. You know, it kind of makes me wonder if at one point Nazgrim might talk to Saurfang. I don't know, probably not. And I guess the last character, because I think I've only mentioned like Horde side people. I'm not trying to counterbalance what an Alliance character, but I think my fifth and final one would be Alleria. I think she's pretty fascinating too. There are a lot of characters that have had longer stories, more meaty stories, but I think that the 1,000 Years of War story with Turalyon and Alleria really, in my opinion, it really elevated Alleria when it comes to what the possibilities and potential for her might be. Now, I'm not too fond of like the whole Void Elf kind of thing that she's doing, but I am fascinated by how she's trying to balance this whole void and light sort of deal. The idea that Alleria is trying to struggle with these void energies while at the same time trying to be a mom, while at the same time trying to still be a lover to Turalyon, although they can't touch technically, so that makes it really weird too. But I'm just very interested in her character and what eventually she's going to become as the months and years go by in Warcraft. So that took a long time. Let's move on to the next question. Rebma Shadowmane asks, you talk a lot about the, quote, people on the toilets, and my question is this: what is it that you do while on the toilet besides the obvious? As a follow-up, is it a particularly productive time for you? Is it where, like, the genius happens? Some people say that they have their genius moments in the shower. Maybe it's for the John. Lastly, does Bob go with you? I know my dog tries to follow me in there sometimes, so maybe Bob too? Keep up the good work, you horde scum. You're scum too, thanks. I read the news on the toilet. I actually do more, you know, like people have shower thoughts. I tend to have that too. I'll be in the shower and I'll have like some cool speech or some cool thing that I want to say in the shower. But then by the time I get out, I lose it. And then I'm like, oh, wow, okay, there goes that. Fugo Panacotta asks, what would be that one dream feature you'd add to the game? It doesn't have to be realistic if you don't want it to. The one dream feature. It would probably be, you know what, this feature would be like literally rewriting the game. But I would want WoW to be a much more sandboxy kind of thing. So I'm talking about, you know, really, really ginormous worlds. Like Orgrimmar is like 7 or 8 times as big as it is, or Borealis and Stormwind are like 7 or 8 times as big as they are, and we'd be able to build homes and apartments and houses and that sort of thing, and it would all have like, it would all be run on a player economy. There wouldn't be vendors of sorts. Everything that is in the World of Warcraft is something that you loot. You don't buy any of that stuff from a vendor, not even like reagents. So having things run off of an entirely player created economy, as well as having like player housing, that would be like my dream thing for WoW. Nicola Tagia asks, hello Soul, nice video. My question is, which will be your main class for Battle for Azeroth and why? Best regards. It's still going to be a protection paladin for the sake of what I enjoy playing, what I contribute to my team and my guild and my raid. And I'm just partial to paladins. It's kind of how I self-identify these days. Azure Dragonheart has a really long question, so let's go. They write, don't know if you'll consider this cheating, but I have 2 questions for you as a potential Q&A. 1, does alpha questing leveling feel super slow to you, and could it possibly be due to Blizzard planning for war mode to offer more experience? I only play for 1 to 2 hours a night in alpha. The horde starting area feels slow as molasses. This could be due to the overhaul of leveling, which I'm not a fan of, but I think I'm halfway through the zone and have only dinged once. And number 2, would you be interested in the Warfronts eventually ending as time goes on? To me, the Warfronts seem to be a vehicle for Blizzard to tell more of a living story, and it at least feels like each faction is trying to reclaim their respective portion of the world. In the case, I would like to see each Warfront end as the next begins. For example, Stormguard should eventually end in Alliance hands, allowing the Alliance to push the Horde further and further away from the from the rest of the Eastern Kingdoms. From there, taking the rest of the lands near Lordaeron, and from there pushing into the Ghostlands and possibly even threatening Silvermoon City. The Horde could do the same in Kalimdor, clearing Ashenvale, then Darkshore, threatening to move on Azure Mist and the Exodar. Would this be a good idea or a bad one, as it might possibly lead to loss of support areas for each faction in the opposite areas? Woo! That's a mouthful. So question 1, alpha questing, does it feel slow? No, for the most part. I think that the questing experience, it's good on pace and pure time. I think it feels slow because the fact that we're only working with 3 zones, you find that when you're doing the whole leveling shindig, that you'll run into a hub, you pick up some quests, and you get more than 1 or 2 times where you'll go back, turn everything, and then you get more stuff. So you'll find that these mini hubs of sorts, that there's a lot of, you're just there in particular areas for a longer period of time than normal, because again, you are leveling in only 3 zones. There's less area for you to cover, at least when you're leveling. But it makes the zones feel really big and meaty and story-filled too. I think there are a lot of occasions in previous expansions like Legion and such, where the story tends to go too fast. You're here in one area, and you're only there for like a few minutes and then you leave and you move on to the next thing, which is okay. But I think that the environment and the environment and the terrain can do a little bit more to tell the story. And I think so far the Battle for Azeroth is selling on that. So no, I don't think it's going that much slower. It just feels slow because you're in the same place for a longer period of time. The experience that you seem to be getting, though, seems to be right on point. As for the second question about Warfronts eventually finding a conclusion, I don't doubt that. I think that by the expansion's end, like let's say like expansion, the 9.0 patch, we find out that such and such faction is going to hold on to this, and such faction will hold on to that, and this other warfront, no one's going to hold it because it got clobbered by a meteor or something. I think that just like the fight between South Shore and Terran Mill, there more than likely will be some sort of conclusion as to who is going to end up owning that territory, or for all we know, it may be like contested forever. Which I wouldn't really agree with, because that would mean warfronts are going to last forever, and I'm a little bit wary about that. I'm not sure if that should be a thing, but it kind of makes sense too if they make warfronts be a perpetual battle for dominance. The one thing that I wouldn't like is if you still had to gather resources and turn stuff in order to keep funding that war effort. I don't think that should be really a thing. I think that at some point the warfront should be available, people should be able to take it, and there will just be a normal back and forth. Because I guess the problem there would be if you do, in fact, if warfronts do find a conclusion, then that means you're removing content as well. And I'm not too comfortable with taking away a game mode that is potentially as fun as something like that. Now, I mean, with that said, they can move on to newer warfronts, but I think it's cool. I think it would be cool to be able to go back to previous warfronts and complete those as well. It's just a matter of how they want to go about it, because at least the nature of warfronts, it would make it really, really hard to solo, given that you need to physically move from point to point, and in the meantime your base is under attack and all that, and as high level as you can get, you still need to hoof your ass all the way over to those locations. The Legend 312 has a question. They're asking, are you thinking of going to Blizzcon this year? It would be awesome to say hi. The answer is yes, I do plan on going to Blizzcon. I have a timeshare set up with a couple of buddies of mine, and at the moment it's just a matter of scoring some tickets or passes, or if I write to Blizzard and beg them, hey, please give me a media pass because you love me, right? I don't know, but I do plan on going. So if you, as we get closer, and assuming that I am going, I'll talk about plans, and I'm not gonna do like a whole, hey, come meet me at this time. But if you see me on the floor, then don't be shy. I'm probably gonna wear some shirt that will obviously identify who I am, in an effort to get a little bit of attention. But yeah, don't be shy and come and say hi. Next question from Pablo Flores. He says, hi Sol and Bob, I would like to know what's your favorite book and why? And also, what do you expect from the Battle for Azeroth patches? Keep up the awesome job. My favorite book. To be honest, I don't read that very many books. Some of my more memorable books that have had a more lasting impact, one of them is a kid's book called If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. And so I recommend looking that up. The moral of the story is, if you give a mouse a cookie, it's going to want a glass of milk, and so on and so on and so on. So great book for kids, good life lesson for adults too. In high school, I read a Steinbeck novel called East of Eden. And it wasn't a super hard read, but I thought it was a pretty compelling one, and one of those that really gets it gets a lot into religion. It has some kind of religious overtones and metaphors and such. But I thought that it impacted me and helped me out when it came to things like faith and all that. I'm not going to get into that too much, but it was just a really good book for me that I happened to reread a number of times. I guess that should remind me of Game of Thrones, huh? But that series hasn't quite ended, and it might not ever end. So we'll just have to see about that. As for what do I expect from the Battle for Azeroth patches, I expect the first major patch to introduce us to Queen Ashara. That's going to be a thing. After that, it's gonna kind of be up in the air. It could lead into something with N'Zoth and the Old Gods. It could lead to something between the Old Gods and, oh, sorry, some conflict between the Light and the Void. I remember I had like this whole wild theory about Illyrian Terrellian, or at least there might be agents of the Light and the Void that'll be coming in to try to recruit people for their cause, and there'll just be like some crazy conflict that happens from there. Part of me, you know, this is all super headcanon kind of stuff, but I have a feeling that by the end of this expansion, this really will be the battle for Azeroth, as in we're trying to save it, where the final patch or the final boss will be the people of Azeroth, not just Horde or Alliance or even factions. It's just the people that live on Azeroth are going to have their backs to the wall. Literally, like Azeroth's world soul will be behind us, and we need to protect it from something. Or maybe Azeroth's world soul has been corrupted, and we need to help do something about it. Otherwise, it's the end of the world, or something like that. So I fully expect something of great consequence to happen before this expansion is over. Something that's going to determine the fate of our world again. John Slattery asks, been watching your channel for quite a good chunk of time now, and seeing how it's grown and developed to this point, where do you see yourself going with it in the future? As for a more direct WoW-related question, from what's announced or implemented in the beta so far, what is your most anticipated addition into the game coming in the Battle for Azeroth? I think John was referring to the channel when it comes to like the future, and I want to just continue building on it and continue to just kind of try out different things. I mean, this Q&A is a different thing that I'm trying out, which could be disastrous because I think I need to do this in like 3 parts, a 3-part Q&A. What the fuck kind of thing is that? Anyway, but I want to continue trying new things, continue to experiment and see what works and doesn't work. I would like to have a higher profile to the point where I can do more interviews with smaller channels, bigger channels, to help, you know, mostly with smaller channels, so I can help the community grow a little bit more. Because the way I see it, helping the WoW community grow means to help nurture smaller channels, smaller content creators, to encourage them to and show them, hey, you know what, I can have this voice, I can you know, I can do this. Because that's, yeah, in small ways there were a number of channels that have helped me out in their own way too. As for my most anticipated addition into the game coming in the Battle for Azeroth, I guess it's because we haven't seen everything yet. I'm most interested probably in War Mode. I want to see what other sorts of things that Blizzard cooks up with regards to War Mode and how they want to grow on that kind of system. I mean, it's cool that we're seeing this assassin rank and this what is it, a bounty system. I think those are really cool and have a lot of potential, but I want to see what more they have to add. If they're going to have like dynamic objectives or things that will otherwise bring players together for the purpose of battle and death and destruction. I think those things will be a lot of fun. The close second would be Warfronts, because after playing through Warfronts, I had a lot of fun with that. I think it has some cool potential. I think that overall it's kind of runs off of a formula. Eventually you kind of get the idea of what to do, and that part becomes boring because you know what to do, you just need to execute on it. But the dynamic of being with different players and possibly a different Warfront commander, it'll make things a little interesting, and it'll give me the chance to maybe mess around with my class and roll and experiment with what I can do to be a badass hero of the Horde or the Alliance and take back this Warfront and just feel really cool doing it. Isaac Kramer asks, how much Xanax do I take after visiting the official forums? I do it very seldom, actually. I don't visit the official forums very much because they have an upvote system, and I'm kind of opposed to upvote systems. I think I think that doesn't do too well with conversing, because the whole point of forums is to communicate, and I don't think a thumbs up or a thumbs down is enough of a communicator. I mean, it's an easy way to communicate. That's why people have polls and upvote, downvote systems, period. But I think the nuance of words is extremely important too. But yeah, I don't participate in that very much because, yeah, I'm just not a big fan of upvote systems. I think they kind of, well, when they had downvotes, they definitely suppressed conversation. But having upvotes, it made bandwagoning and brigading kind of a thing, and that's not something I'm entirely for. I do, as much as sadistic as I feel about admitting it, I do participate a lot in the MMO champion forum. So if you want, go ahead and look up Soul Breeze on the MMO champion forums, and I'll post at least like one thing a day. You know, maybe it might be like some, you know, random comment here and there or something silly, but I usually try to engage with people there too, especially whenever there is misinformation or incorrect information. I'll try to clarify or clear things up. Unless I'm wrong, then I'm like, oh shit, then I'm wrong. But it is sometimes fun to engage with some of the more fervent posters there who are who have just like a lot to say, that are super cynical, and like those are some of the favorites, because they are extremely convinced on their views, and there's like no talking them out of it. But I do like to talk to them anyway, at least sometimes, because they can get pretty nasty. So Alan writes, if I start a campfire on August 13th at 11 o'clock in Teldrassil, will I be responsible for burning it down? Yeah. Louanne Bittencourt writes, I know I can't win this token because I'm a Brazilian and I play there, but I'm going to ask anyways. What do you think about customization options, like things that can be shown on your character, like quiver, ammo bags? I made a list for every class and spec, and about race customization, like undead, fresher undead like Nathanos, trolls, forest trolls, buff trolls, and well, he has a lot of examples here. They could add scars, tattoos, weapon types. What do I think about it? Can it be done, or is it just my imagination? I'm hella for that. If Blizzard can manage something like that. I know that part of the challenge is that the engine that they run off of, it's very restrictive when it comes to big changes like that, especially like especially with the way things are animated, and unfortunately the size of weapons and shields and whatnot that they have on them. It'd be very easy for those sort of things to clip together. I know that there is a certain tolerance that players have with regards to clipping. It's like, okay, it's kind of okay in this case, it's kind of not okay in other cases. That's kind of where I get turned off by things like giant shoulders that do weird things with how you're animated. Like if I were to try to pose a character with big honking shoulders, it wouldn't exactly look right, because those big honking shoulders might look like they're literally squishing that character's head. So that part I'm not too fond of, but I don't think that's something that Blizzard can really get away from. I do like that there are certain transmog sets, and we especially started seeing this in Legion, where certain transmog sets have like little bandoliers or belt buckles or other 3D effects that provide a little bit more depth and character to the pieces of equipment that you wear. I know what you're talking about more are separate things, like things that are kind of modular, like quivers and such. I think those would be cool too. Maybe one way to implement that is to apply them to like a certain belt, or to apply them to a certain chest piece, because so that way you can kind of get the best of both worlds. It's like, cool, you can have a quiver, but at the same time it's going to apply to a transmog clothing model that will work with it, and that way Blizzard can avoid some of those clipping issues that they would otherwise have if you were to just equip it onto any old sorry, I'm just totally stuttering now. Unless you were able to equip it on something else, maybe it just wouldn't look right. Raymond Martinez asks, I personally like the gating of new races. It seems like the combination of time gating and heritage armor perks is to make the old world feel alive and relevant. If you leveled any of the 4 recent races, you saw things you hadn't in ages. General chat in Stranglethorn Vale, groups working together on beefed out queued mobs, quest mobs, low level PvP, and often griefing. It was a good feeling and put the world back into Warcraft. Regarding the question I had asked on another video, but what do you think of the children of Azeroth? Moira's son, roughly 9 years now, will be the first king of all dwarven tribes since Anvilmar. Thrall's children are 7 or 8. The Blood Elf girl from Children's Week, who the dragons in Caverns of Time attempt to kill, should be an adult, with apparently a hefty future. Maybe she's involved with their corruption. Sunwalker Desco left a son in Pandaria. I thought the son died. Anyway, I mean, Anduin and Nomi shouldn't be the only 2 we've seen grown up in game, right? Yes. I think basically what we're getting at to is, when are these kids going to grow up? Kind of like how we saw Anduin eventually grow up, how we saw Nomi grow up somehow, even though suspiciously Lily has not. I think she's a vampire, but oh well. I would like to see follow-ups, a new generation of Warcraft characters come up and about, and we're seeing that slowly happen. Again, for example, Anduin is one character, but we just don't have a lot of young characters. The ones that you cite here, it's hard to say whether or not these kids will eventually grow to become like the great heroes that their parents once were, or if they'll become really relevant to the story, because we've seen the children of some of these characters not really have much of a prominent presence later on, but maybe it's just because not a lot of time has passed by. My hopes are that if there is some sort of World of Warcraft 2, or which is not likely, or if there's a Warcraft 4, which is slightly more likely, that we will see a new generation of Warcraft characters start propping up, whether it's the kids of some of these other characters or brand new ones that pop up. To be honest, I prefer the latter. I prefer brand new characters to appear, so, and with only minor references to the older generation of Warcraft characters, mostly so we can get into something fresh and new and not be held back by the past, unless for whatever reason it's written in that, you know, Thrall becomes a world shaman again and becomes evil, and now he's the Fire Lord. I don't know. Totally coming out of my butt. But like I said, I would like to see something new with these kids that have grown up in this generation of Warcraft, but preferably I would like to see like a brand new generation of characters. Lockpower Gaming writes, do you think Blizzard should add new raids to Legacy WoW? For example, there's that gate in Southern Tanaris. Maybe there's a raid behind there, or maybe when Legacy Cataclysm rolls around, will Firelands get its water counterpart that got scrapped during Live, the one that we're supposed to save Neptulon? Do you think this would be a good allocation of resources? No, I don't. The thing with a classic or a legacy WoW is that you're revisiting the things that once were, right? You're going back, doing those old things again, reliving the experience as it once was. Having something new added to it would absolutely disturb what's the whole idea of bringing back like those legacy things. And at the same time, if you're going to bring in a brand new raid in what is considered like legacy content, then it's not legacy content anymore, it's something brand new. So naturally players would also be like, well, if you're going to have what is it, the Abyssal Depths raid in Legacy, in this Legacy Cataclysm thing, why wouldn't you have it in the present version of WoW instead? So I don't think it would be a very good allocation of resources, because you would need to design the raid twice. One with respect to how Cataclysm is, or for example with Abyssal Depths, one with respect to how Cataclysm was at the time, and the other with whatever expansion that you're doing now, even though that would be considered outdated content anyway. I would definitely I'm definitely on the side of like a classic or a legacy WoW being as close to what it originally was as possible. And I'm talking about population control. I'm talking about systems, balance, that sort of thing. Keep it all as close as it once was, just bug free, and nothing more than that. Errol Akoseba asks, "Hey Sol, thanks for the war mode tip and reminding us to take a couple days off when the expansion goes live. Ha! Here's the question. With a lack of a Suramar zone in the Battle for Azeroth, how do you think the storyline will progress after getting to 120? So there isn't going to be a Suramar zone, so to speak, but there is going to be a Suramar-style questline in the form of the war campaign. At least that's how it's going to be sold to us. So instead of having a brand new zone to mess around with, instead we're going to have a brand new continent to mess around with. So for example, as Alliance, we supposedly during the war campaign, we will at a very early stage start setting up outposts or footholds in the other continents. And then once you get to max level, that's when things open up and you'll be able to supposedly freely go over to these other continents to do violence and shenanigans, that sort of thing, where you'll get dailies and you'll get quest hubs and you'll get the progressive storyline that'll take us through that entire war campaign. As for whether or not it's going to be as meaty as the Suramar experience, I want it to be. I want it to be like this deep, enriching, lore-filled experience, but I have a feeling that it won't be. That's a lot to ask, to have two separate meaty quest lines that is faction exclusive. I mean, it's kind of cool because it's like, oh man, now I'm going to want to play. I definitely want to play as both factions, so that way I can experience the story from the Horde side, the story from the Alliance side, and then that way I can take sides and call the Horde a bunch of cucks, or some equivalent to that. But I doubt that's going to happen, unfortunately. It would be great, mind you, if I would be very pleasantly surprised if we got an experience similar to Suramar with plenty of story and such. But I'm going to be a healthy skeptic about it and kind of get the idea that yes, we're going to get like some decent story out of it. Nothing that is as grand as Suramar, but no less stuff to do. We're still going to probably have a lot of things to do over on the other side. Carrot writes, "What is your favorite boss of your favorite raid of your favorite expansion?" Son of a bitch. If you put a gun to my head and you told me and you asked me this question, then I would say the Will of the Emperor in Mogashan Vaults in Miss Pandaria, only because of this one mechanic where, well, part of it is because of vengeance, like I was talking about before, but there's a mechanic from the Will of the Emperor where you have to like just do a certain dance where you got to move left or right to eat like a certain cleave, and if you do the whole sequence right, you get a really big DPS buff. And for me, that was one of the most engaging things and fulfilling things to get as a tank of that time, especially because of the vengeance mechanic, because then I was doing like ridiculous amounts of damage and healing with my battle healer talent, and that was just a lot of fun. That probably isn't my favorite raid overall, and it's one of my favorite expansions, but when it comes to like what my favorite PvE experience was, it's totally all over the place. Like I would give like 5 different answers if you asked me during 5 different periods of time. Captain Howdy asks, "Why don't you do your intro commercial for Twitch subs? Is it Patreon that gives you more money out of the pot? As far as Biffa, I'm a little worried about the Azeroth armor. I don't want to have 3 different sets for all 3 specs. Like as of now, Boomkin and Resto Druids can have the same secondary stats, but if the armor has to be talented for each spec, that throws out the whole reason to me that they work well with secondary stats." So I guess when it comes to like the whole Twitch and Patreon thing, I know that I'm all over the place with that. Little disclosure, when it comes to the difference between a Twitch subscriber and a Patreon and a patron, if a patron donates $5 a month or something like that, the person, as in me, I'm gonna get pretty close to $5. If a Twitch subscriber signs up for a $5 subscription, that's cut in half between me and Twitch. But of course, part of becoming a Twitch subscriber is that you get access to emotes and other things that the channel provides for you, which I do not. I do a very poor job of that. So if I would say that, and I'm not telling anyone what to do, okay? I want to make that very, very clear. But if you wanted to make sure that your favorite content creator person got the most benefit out of what you are donating to him or her, then you're probably better off being a patron, because Patreon doesn't take a big cut, unlike Twitch, which takes like half of it. So there's that. As for the Azeroth armor, let me move on to that piece of it. They did say that you would be able to kind of respec Azeroth armor. They didn't quite know how they were going to do it, which kind of worries me. The fact that you can even respec them at all, because that, to me, that devalues the armor itself, or it devalues the hunt of getting that armor. Now, I know that there's going to be pushback saying, oh god, so now you prefer that I farm like endlessly so I can have complete sets for all the things that I want to do? And I'm kind of saying that I wouldn't really want it to, because there are a number of players that want to have everything that they have for all their characters, but that's also the burden that you choose, in my opinion. I'm coming from a pretty limited perspective because I'm only really going to focus on one class and one spec for the entire expansion, and anything else that I focus on is just kind of an afterthought or a bonus or just like an extra thing that I happen to have time for. But I don't think that's, I don't know, like the ability to respec, just like how you can easily swap out talents, just how you just, and so on and so forth, that it kind of makes it feel like the game is balanced around the idea of you'll eventually have everything anyway. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not quite getting this right, but it just doesn't feel like the Azeroth traits will feel as impactful or meaningful, knowing that I can always respec it for the given fight that I'm going to have. I'm hoping that that doing some sort of respec on Azeroth armor will be incredibly restrictive, or at the very least something that involves like the player economy, like a crafter has to make, you know, like a blacksmith or a tailor or a leather worker has to make certain tokens that lets you respec. Then I would be like, okay, it's kind of okay, because at least that's something in the hands of the player economy. Like I said, I'm a big fan of sandboxy stuff. Without having that though, if it's just like a thing that you buy, that would be kind of a turnoff for me, especially if it's cheap. If it's very cheap or inexpensive, like Tomes of Tranquil Mind, I think that would be pretty damaging for the Azeroth system itself. Shavazul asks, if you were a cake or a pie, which and what kind would I be and why? P.S. I'm really enjoying your speculative lore ideas, like the new Death series. They make chores so much more bearable. Hey, you're welcome. I'm just gonna say, what's my you know, if I was a cake or pie, I would be the most nasty, disgusting cake or pie possible, so that way no one would eat me and people would leave me the fuck alone. But if I want it to be delicious, if I'm just talking about what my favorite cake or pie is, these days my favorite cake is a kind of Japanese cheesecake. It's like fluffy cheesecake. Oh, it's so good. If I was pie, then I would want to be, I don't know, maybe a banana cream pie. I haven't had that in quite a while, but I like banana cream pie. Or just good old apple pie with ice cream. Mr. Rio of Blades, hello, asks, why do you think panadas should become paladins? I'm sure you meant to say pandas. Also, should there be more Old War speeches that you can hear around the game world? Okay, to the second question, no, absolutely not. But do I think pandas should become paladins, or otherwise, when it comes to class raise combos, is nothing sacred, or should nothing be sacred? It depends, man. I mean, could we see I guess with Paladin specifically, you got to make if you're gonna have Paladins as your class for a given race, you got to have a Paladin order, the Order of the Silver Hand, the Sunwalkers, the Blood Knights, the whatever Draenei call themselves. I guess them and dwarves and all that. I guess they all lump themselves as the Silver Hand. But anyway, sure, I would say why not? As like I say very often, as long as the narrative is written, and as long as it's relatively convincing, shoot, go for it. The Order of the Paladins. Paladins? I don't think that's gonna work, but you know, something like that. I can almost kind of see that working. Kind of like an opposite of the Shadow Pan or something. I don't know. Andrew Miner asks, "Hey Soul, my Q&A question is, outside of Tinkers, I know you love the idea of them, what would be the class that you would like to have added to the game?" Crap. Not Tinkers, huh? Okay, now I gotta think about this. Okay, I got something. It's a bad idea, but who cares? There's a game that I used to play that shut down now. It's an MMO called City of Villains. And in this game, you can make your own supervillain, which is kind of neat. And one of the classes in that game was called Mastermind. What that class was, it was an entirely pet-centric class, like hardcore. Like all your abilities involve your pets with the exception of like one or two things where, and the thing was you had I think a total of 6 pets. You had a tier 1 pet, and that was like 3 of them, and you can control all of them. The tier 2 pet, you had 2 of them, and they would be like utility based or something like that. And then you had a tier 3 pet, which is like some big honking crazy thing. I think that if they had a mastermind class or like a super pet centric class in WoW, I think that would be cool. I don't think it would work at all either, because in City of Villains, your pets did all the work. There's very, very little work that you had to do. Whereas with WoW, when we think of something like Demologs or Beastmaster Hunters, you still had a relative rotation where after certain things you hit a certain button so that you can get all your pets buffed and have them power up, and that might not work the same way if you happen to have like 6 of the damn things. But I don't know. I mean, the closest right now that we see are with Demologs and the ability to just summon tons and tons of imps. I think it's cool. I don't think it's enough. I think there could be a very a more pet-centric class that isn't even focused on rotation. You just kind of send your minions out, and you can be a lazy shit like the whole time. But that's me. That's the kind of gameplay that I would like. Brandon Strauss asks, "Oh boy, if a paladin wasn't a class in Warcraft, what would you be maining?" No, you can't answer with, "I would be playing another game." Well, technically, I can say I wouldn't play any game, but. I think I answered this a little bit before. I would probably be a warlock, because I was a warlock, and then I saw a paladin, and I was like, "Hey, sweet, I'm gonna be a paladin." So if that never happened, if I never saw that Hobbs video, and if Blood of Paladins were never a thing, then I probably would have just stayed as my warlock. I would have been bumming around trying to struggle and be good at DPSing, which is, oh man, that'd be so weird, DPSing the whole time. But I would probably be a warlock. I'd probably be a bad warlock, which means I wonder if I would still be playing the game if it wasn't for my switching to a paladin. That's how impactful my class choice was, at least in retrospect. Maybe I wouldn't have been playing now. No One You Know asks, "The only question I can think of is, with the new basic removal of PvP servers, in your opinion, how will this affect open world PvP or lack thereof? Will it help bring back, or will Warfronts make it even relevant at this point or worth doing?" Well, Warfronts are going to be, they're separate from the idea of PvP, unless they do PvP Warfronts, which I think would be kind of cool, but I can't even imagine how that would work well, at least not at the moment. I do think that the removal of PvP servers is going to be pretty jarring at first. We're going to, I think Realms are going to have like an identity crisis all of a sudden, where players that used to be like all about PvP in this particular realm, they're not going to be quite known for that anymore, because that identifier is just gone. I mean, at this point, it's going to be awkward. Because if there are a large number of players that queue up for war mode, you're going to have multiple shards that are within this war mode, but they're not all together. They're still going to be separated, and I don't think that's entirely great of a thing because of the nature of sharding and cross roam zones. You probably wouldn't necessarily run into the same players more than once, so it would be hard for you to gain a sort of identity. And I think that the bounties and the assassin things that are going to happen in war mode for Battle for Azeroth, I think that helps. Because it'll help identify players that are like notorious for being rabid killers and such. So I think it'd be cool if Blizzard helped that along by, I think I talked about this idea before, where at the end of a week they kind of tally up who did the most kills or something like that, just as a very loose example, and the top 1% of players who happen to have like the most kills, they get a temporary title that makes them like feel cool for a little bit. And when they have this title, they get extra honor or Azerite or something like that. But they're also a bigger target for other players too. So players are more than happy, more than determined to kill them. And this title, like I said, it's temporary. It only lasts for a week, because at the end of the next week, they once again take the top percentage of players that have been killing, and then you kind of go with that over and over again. I think that part would be cool, and I think that would help, especially if it was transparent and you can see it on like the WoW website, or you can see it in other public places like WoW Progress, Radar.io, where you see, or even Wowhead, where you see, hey, here are like the top whatever players who are like the notorious players of the week. I think that would be pretty cool from a just from a fame standpoint. It's like, oh man, this and this person, they've been on the board for like 7 weeks straight. They're killers. Or I guess cynically, it's like, wow, PvP is totally dead. The same couple people are like up there, and no one else is getting these guys. So it could go either way, but I think that would be a cool way to approach it. Jose G asks, what do you do just to goof around in WoW to vent off steam from the grind? Me, I just explore areas to find Easter eggs. Robin Williams, rest in peace, is my favorite, and so on and so forth. That's kind of a harder question than I had at first thought when I saw this question. Most of the time I tend to not grind. I save all my grinding for like the very beginning of an expansion, when I'm like pushing really hard and I'm trying to max out my level, my rep, and things like that, so I don't have to worry about it so much afterwards. And then I can just kind of chill and relax, because usually if I feel like I'm burning out from WoW, I just kind of stop playing WoW for like a little bit. I'll hop onto other games. I'll play a little bit of StarCraft. I'll play something on the PS4. I'll hop onto a phone game or something, or I'll go outside. Ugh, I know. Sometimes that happens. But as for like things that I'll do inside WoW, I do it a lot less frequent these days, but at least before I would farm for herbs. This is way before I started to just farm herbs from the auction house, know what I mean? But I would like farm for herbs, gathering stuff. Archaeology is kind of a thing that I do a little bit. In fact, it's something that I still need to do to catch up. But that's, yeah, otherwise not too much. I tend to be the type of WoW player who's like, okay, if I feel like I'm overwhelming myself with things to do, I will just stop playing WoW for a little bit and sneeze, or try to not sneeze. Don't sneeze, no sneeze. But yeah, I'll just stop for a little while. Take a quick break. Even if it's only like for like a couple of hours or so. It's like, you know what? I just feel like being off. It's post-raid. I feel like resting. Or I just did like a terrible Mythic Dungeon run. Let's rest for a little bit. Or take a nap or something like that. That's about it. David Diaz asks, what is your honest opinion on the state of Protection Paladins? What would you add or remove regarding their talent, their abilities, or look? Thanks for the great episode. I'm gonna do an extended thing on like with regards to like the alpha David when it comes to, hey, this is what Azerite traits this is what the Azerite traits are like. This is what I think of the global cooldown, and I think somewhere throughout this Q&A I talk about, I'm gonna be talking about, or I had already talked about, Protection Paladins and how that's going. When it comes to the Um, what would I add from and remove from talents? Easily, I would do something about Retribution Aura, because that thing's total dog do. Dog do. It totally blows. It feels like a absolutely useless talent that really should just be baseline because it matters that little to me as a player. So you might as well just give it to me baseline or just remove it and replace it with a better talent because it just really sucks. As for other talents or abilities, I do miss certain things. Like I really miss Holy Prism as well as Light's Judgment. Those were fun abilities that I enjoyed a lot during Mists of Pandaria, and I think that was around during World of Draenor as well. But I miss them. I thought they were fun. They were cool. They were different things for me to do, and I was able to do some pretty cool things with them. Like, with Holy Prism, I can hit a friend and hit a bunch of enemies that are around my friend, and I would get a bunch of aggro, and that would be a pretty cool feeling to have. Otherwise, as for my general opinion of Protection Paladins, I think we're fine. I think we're in a good spot. I think there is a certain uniqueness to us when it comes to the shield, the shield tanks, protection warriors and protection paladins. I think that we each have unique things that we bring to the table. Warriors can do things that Paladins can't. Paladins can do things that warriors can't, and so on and so forth. There are certain weaknesses of the paladin that it would be cool if they could address. Like I do feel like sometimes mobility can be an issue. It's cool to have the horse. The horse is very useful, but I do miss other things. Like I think it was Long Arm of the Law that gave me a quick speed boost or speed of light, and that was a toggle, or that was a quick ability that I'd be able to use, kind of similar to Divine Steed. But apart from that, I think we're good. It feels cool to be a protection paladin. It feels cool specking for Hand of the Protector and using it to heal a buddy of mine. And at the moment, since we don't quite have all the Azerite cool traits to mess around and play with, it's hard for me to say. It's hard for me to come to any sort of conclusion as to how I feel about the Protection Paladin. Are we doing okay? Are we going to be okay in the battle for Azeroth? It still remains to be seen, but in the meantime, I am still optimistic as to how we're going to perform. Because for the most part, after being a Paladin for so long, I've learned that regardless of the actual state of the class in terms of this is what some pro YouTube mythic raider person says, regardless of what the other pundits or what the websites say, I'm still going to try and be the best me that I can be. That sounds so goofy, but yeah, you know what I mean? I'm just going to try to perform as the best as I can with what I've got. And as long as there isn't like some crazy imbalance or crazy weakness of a protection paladin, then I'm still going to be happy. KK Duncan asks, I'm going to ask a typical question here. What is your favorite memory from WoW, or what is your favorite expansion? I think I'm on record for saying my favorite expansion is Mists of Pandaria, mostly for the story and for Vengeance tanking, because that's awesome. But that's definitely high up there, but I'll leave it at that. As for my favorite memory from WoW, I guess there's a lot. 13 years of memories is a lot of, missed out gear, non-drops, or epic drops. No, it was during Wrath of the Lich King, and it was Christmas time. I was just kind of doing my thing, and one of my co-tank at the time, Corey, he was like, "Hey, so come down to, I think it was Ogrimmar, or come down somewhere. I wanna show you something." I'm like, okay. So I'm in game. I go over to where he is. He opens trade with me, and I didn't know what to expect, but he traded me a Mechano Hog, and I was like, what? Where did this come from? And he's like, well, me and the guild, we pulled everything together. We pulled in some resources, and we made you a bike because you're cool and you're awesome, and yada yada yada. And I was like, I was floored. I was I was borderline emotional, and this was all in chat. There was no, we weren't using voice chat at the time or something like that. But I was still thinking back on that. It was really cool. It was that feeling of, I have this guild and I put my blood and sweat into it, and I lead this team through the thick and thin, and good times and bad times, and they decided to pull together and thank me for it. That's definitely one of the coolest moments in WoW, which is funny because it has not very much to do with the game itself. It doesn't have anything to do with like some epic kill or a cool drop or a clutch move, a moment of god tanking, which are always awesome. It was just that very human feeling of giving. Hey, we pulled together, we did this for you, and it was really touching. Slap I'm Tackies asks, why is Bob such an asshole? Bob is, I don't know why he's an asshole. I made him that way. Bob compliments my kind of self-deprecating humor. He compliments me in a certain way that I don't think I would be able to pull off if I was just talking to myself, or if I was just talking on the side. Oh yeah, that's really cool, unless it's not. That's kind of what Bob is. He's kind of that counter, that id. I don't know quite what to identify it as, but that's why Bob's such an asshole, because he was born that way. I made him like that. Dragaris asks, a quick question here. What percentage of people do you think are on the toilet on your videos? To contribute, add at least one. See, it's funny because I myself do not watch YouTube on the toilet. That just seems weird. It's definitely not something I do, but I mean, I read the news. I read the news on the toilet. So yeah, there's that. And I don't know, it just kind of happened where I started to call people out. It's like, oh, maybe people do in fact watch videos on, while they're taking a dump or whatever. So I just started doing it. As for like the percentage of people, half of you, no doubt. Time Lost Soul asks, so my question is a multi-parted question, cheater. First, if you were around, because I didn't know, during Classic and Wrath, how did you feel about the old talent system, and now looking back, how do you feel about it? The second part to this is which the introduction of artifact weapons and the new Heart of Azeroth item, do you feel Blizzard is trying to test the waters or set up for some new system to replace that, like the Path of the Titan system for after max level customization and progression? And, hey, that's a threefer. And how do you feel about this idea as a whole? The upsides, the downsides to adding in an old talent-esque system for max level progression beyond gear and item levels? He goes on to say, I'm sorry it's a long question, but I'm dying to know what someone else thinks. Damn. Okay, so part one, how did I feel about the talent system during Classic and Wrath? At the time, there wasn't a whole lot to go on. I mean, so it felt like it is what it is. We get our 1%. God, if I remember correctly, I think even being uncrittable in during BC, I think that was I think we had to put points into that. We had to put points into being able to be non-crittable, which was, okay, great. It's like pretty obvious that we're going to do that. In retrospect, though, I'm in pretty full agreement with Blizzard when they say, well, when you wanted to spec a certain way, obviously you were going to get these certain things and see these certain things and these certain things. So we decided to just kind of do that for you. That's kind of okay. But I'm a little opposed to taking away that sort of control from players with regards to, hey, you know what? I want to be able to spec totally wrong and pay the price and learn a lesson from that. In a way, specializations I think were kind of bad for the game because it takes the thinking out of players. At the same time, though, there is some pretty obvious, there is a kind of an obviousness of it. If you're going to be playing as a tank, you are naturally going to get Avenger Shield. As a protection paladin, you're naturally going to be uncrittable. You're going to get Avenger Shield. You're going to get a talent that gives you massive amounts of threat. Otherwise, it just wouldn't quite work. Or if anything, it would hardly be viable in any sense of the word. So the whole illusion of choice thing that Blizzard likes to use and some folks on the forums like to use, I buy into that. That's definitely a thing. So that said, I don't like the talent system of now either. I think that because Blizzard is able to rebalance and retool the talents and switch them up because they feel like, oh, we want to do this instead, that makes the talent system not feel like a system of trees, of something that you build up to. It's like, ooh, cool, cool, I'm unlocking my level 45 row. Now I'm going to get these cooler talents than the ones from the ones above, which is not true. You will find that cool talents exist like all over the place regardless. And the way that they arrange the talent rows is more like, hey, this is the crowd control one, this is the AoE one, this is the single target one, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure a lot of that's going to change before the Battle for Azeroth launches, but it makes me not very happy about the current talent system either. I think that something cooler could be done that feels a bit more progressive, like having a sub-spec tree, and I talk about this in videos, but I'm not going to get too much into that here. Alright, so part 2, Heart of Azeroth. Do I feel like Blizzard is testing the... I think that when it comes to the Heart of Azeroth, or when it comes to any sort of feature, I don't think there's a conspiracy of, ooh, Blizzard is doing this so they can test the waters for a system that they would actually be trying to do, but they're just kind of letting players have a go at this to, test the waters, so to speak. I don't buy into that at all, because if they wanted to try something out, then they would just have us try something out. They wouldn't ease us into it. And anything that we see progress is more like just an evolution of that system. So as I guess a crappy example would be like the Warlords of Draenor Garrison. It's like, cool, let's try out offline progression. Let's see how that works. When it comes to the shipyard, was that more like Blizzard thinking to themselves, hey, let's test the bed with garrisons and move on to the shipyard and see how people like it? No, not really. I just think that it's just something that they had already pre-planned anyway, and they just wanted to go with this next step to see how that works. From there, from expansion to expansion is when Blizzard decides, okay, let's take the lessons that we've learned from the previous expansion or the patch and apply it to what's new. So then we got what we have with Order Halls, and from that we're going to get whatever the heck we get from the mission table in the Battle for Azeroth. So no, I don't buy into the general idea of them unleashing a system upon players to try things out. It's more like, this is the 1.0, we're going to go all in with this, and then if it works, cool, we're going to take these lessons, whether it works or not, actually, we're going to take those lessons learned and apply that to the next iteration, because they want to build on these things. It's not exactly a testbed, it's just an evolution of design, and not too much more than that. And I guess the third part with the Heart of Azeroth and how do I feel about the idea as a whole with regards to customization and progression, so far I think it's a great idea. The part that remains to be seen is whether or not the traits are going to be interesting enough for us to want to do the whole mixing and matching of things, because that's how I see the system more than anything. It's a system of customization, of looking at the different build that we want to create for ourselves for a certain class and spec and running with it. It's like, cool, I want to make it so that my Avenger Shield hits 11 targets at once, and in order to do that I need to get this piece of gear and this piece of gear and this piece of gear from all these dungeons. Good luck, soul. So I think having that kind of mindset as a player is much better than how it has been during the Legion expansion, because unlike the whole targeted farming sort of deal, it's more like I'm going to do a Mythic 15, and I'm going to pray to the gods that I'm going to get a decent item in a slot that doesn't already take up a legendary, that has a high Titan Forge and a freaking socket and a bowl of chili on the side. That sort of expectation in Legion is not something that I was very fond of, and that's why I really stopped caring to do Mythic Plus, and that's why I'm notorious for not even having finished a Mythic 15, because I don't care. Well, one, I don't need to do it anymore, but it made the whole reward from doing those kinds of dungeons not very fulfilling, because it's such a random roll from those chests. Feisty Joanna asks, is Bob single? Well, no, I'm not single. I'm not loyal either. Damn. All right. And I think I'm at my last question. Oh my god. Whiskey Rat asks, hey Asol, if you had to get a tattoo of anything WoW related, if I don't already, what would you get? A full-on Illidan tribal set, a Horde Alliance logo, a Hearthstone on your butt cheek maybe? Oh god, just imagine like the full butt cheek with like the full swirl around it. Yeah, that would be really attractive. If I had to get a tattoo, so I must, huh? If I had a better built body, if I was like a total sex pot and all that, I probably would do a tribal-y thing. Not exactly an Illidan sort of thing, but probably more like a Mag'har Orc sort of dealy. I do like what Ilaria sports too, with her bluish looking tattoo looking things. I think those look pretty cool. To be honest, I'm not a big tattoo person at all though, so it's like, shit, what do I know? But I don't know if I have the balls in me to like ever do it, but I think it would be cool to have like this full on like Horde kind of tattoo-y sort of thing going on. But I definitely don't have the courage for it. And that's it. That is finally it. I was very happy to answer just about all these questions that people had asked me over the past couple weeks, and I super appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I hope that you folks at home had a lot of fun listening and watching too. So I would like to do more of these in the future. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to slowly gather up questions. You know, I'll ask them during the weeklies and such. And then hopefully I'll do like really quick bite-sized kinds of Q&As, maybe every other week or so. And hopefully they'll just be like, 20, 30 minutes long and something like that. So please provide feedback in a comment below. Let me know what you think, aside from the fact that it's way too long. That there's too many questions. I already have ideas on how to improve on these Q&As in the future. So again, thank you very much for coming and letting me be a part of your day. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Please like and subscribe to help support the channel, and let me keep doing what I love doing, because, well, I don't want to stop. So like I said, I'll see you next time. But until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.